Hi, everyone, and welcome to Meet the Professors. My name is Taylor Kemp. I'm the Director of Formed, and with me today is Dr. Israel McGrew. Dr. McGrew, thank you for being here.
Happy to do it.
We are excited to have you on this segment, and we are trying to get to know our professors. For many of you on Formed, you've gotten to know our professors through teaching, so Dr. McGrew will be another familiar face, so it'll be good to get to know him. So, Dr. McGrew, I wanted to begin by asking, when did you begin teaching at the Augustine Institute?
Just this August, so 2022.
Very, very recently. And then how did you end up doing so?
Well, I was good friends with one or two of the faculty members before and ran into the dean, Dr. John Seahorn at SBL last fall, and heard you guys were hiring. So
Very nice. Okay, and so were you teaching anywhere before that?
Yeah, so I did my dissertation at Marquette, and I had been teaching there adjunct as well as at a seminary in the Milwaukee area.
Okay. So, what would you do your dissertation in?
The Book of Job.
That is unique.
Yes, ill-advised.
Ill-advised. Would you stand by that still? Ill-advised?
It was good for me. I read a few.
It's quite a book.
Yeah, it's maybe the toughest book in the Bible.
Yeah,
to
I would not
read.
disagree with that. Yeah. Okay, so we will talk a bit more about the Book of Job and your dissertation, I am sure, but I wanted to take a couple steps back. So give us a little bit of your educational background. Where did you do undergrad, and then how did you end up getting to that dissertation where you were studying Job?
Mm-hmm. So I did my undergraduate at Concordia University in Irvine, California.
What did you study?
Theology and history.
Okay.
And so that's the Lutheran.
You were always interested in theology?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I went to college in order to become a pastor in the Lutheran Church.
Okay.
And so that was the reason for going to college at all,
Yeah.
let alone doing theology. But went on to do my master's at Notre Dame.
So I have to ask, so you were interested in the Lutheran tradition and you wanted to go be a pastor, Notre Dame being a Catholic school. How did you end up getting to Notre Dame?
Yeah. So in the process of my undergraduate studies, I found that the academic study of theology healed me, helped me grow in my faith, really helped heal my soul in some profound ways, in ways that I hadn't had the experience of that with a pastor. And so it became a lot more imaginable for me to see myself in that sort of a role.
Okay.
I wanted to help people grow through the rigorous pursuit of theology. And so I started kind of looking around and wondering about it and having existential crises about whether I was supposed to be a pastor or a professor. And one of my professors sent me a list of grad programs. And senior year, by the time I looked at that list, only one of them had an application deadline that hadn't expired.
And that was Notre Dame?
That was Notre Dame.
Okay, so
Providence is a funny thing.
It is, yes. Okay, so you're getting your master's in sacred theology from Notre Dame, and then you are still planning on at least being likely a professor within the Lutheran tradition. So talk us through that, because obviously being here, you are no longer Lutheran. So what was going on as you were at Notre Dame and then moved on from there?
Yeah, so that could be a long story. I'll say, though, that, yes, I was planning to stay Lutheran. In fact, spring of 2014, my final semester at Notre Dame, I was in the process of applying for seminary.
Okay.
So I was,
you're still in it,
about doing the dual track. And that spring, after the culmination of a lot of study and prayer, and again, existential angst, I finally got to the point where I'd, read Thomas Aquinas on merit and Bernard on merit, and I had thought about the Marian dogmas and, the intercession of the saints and all these, hot button Protestant confessional issues. And so I thought through all these things, and I determined that they were coherent and plausible and not blasphemous. But I got to the point where I couldn't think my way into the church.
Okay.
And so I realized that I had to pray.
Yeah.
And I've been praying all along.
Yeah.
But I came to the specific prayer of, God, I can't think my way into this church. I see these teachings. I see they're coherent. I can even see a certain beauty to them. But I can't convince myself they're true. If you are calling me to enter the Catholic Church, then you're going to have to make it plain to me. And a few weeks later, it's kind of I felt a weight when I was in the middle of a seminar, and it just became evident to me that this, in fact, was where God was calling me, to serve, and where my pursuit of truth was actually leading.
I like that a lot. I've heard a story before of it was actually from one of our other professors here, but they were talking to someone who was not a Catholic. They were a Christian, and they were kind of hashing out some of the differences that exist between Catholics and Protestants. And the professor was saying how his buddy was basically like, "Look, I get it. Like these things make sense, but I just can't get there." And the professor said, "Well, have you ever asked God to help you get there? If you like can't make that kind of final leap?" And it just reminded me a bit of your story, but that we always need the help of grace. Just to overcome these things that have they've just been in us for a long time. So obviously something like conversion is not just an individual journey, and I'm sure there was friends and family and much else going on in your life. When you were going through that and then God kind of lifted this burden and you were able to kind of get there yourself, what was it like with the rest of friends, family? You don't have to go into details so much, but was that a difficult process? Was it relatively smooth?
It was relatively smooth. I had broached the topic once or twice with a couple of family members when I first started thinking about it, and long before I decided to do it.
Were they all Lutheran?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those ones were. And so I think that helped, just like
it wasn't completely
I'm thinking
fresh.
about this and, answer some of their questions and concerns before it's a done deal. And so they can have a little more peaceable, discussion about it. But there's also been kind of a little bit of bitterness from a couple of them. But
Yep. Nope. Families and friends. It's a beautiful thing, but it can be difficult. Okay, so you decide that you want to be a Catholic, and then that happens right at the end of your MTS at Notre Dame.
Yeah, at the tail end there.
Okay, and then you want to go on to doctoral studies. Has that already been decided at this point?
Yeah, the priest who received me into the church did tell me that I should discern the priesthood, and so I spent about a weekend doing that before. And I was already dating my now wife at the time, and so I had to tell her, like, well, we should really think about this. Yeah.
She was, okay.
Yeah, she was Catholic. And so that would, allowed her to have her own existential angst for a couple days. But really just in the process of, submitting to God and wanting to discern his will, it was pretty much immediate. That's like, okay, Israel, I needed you to offer this up, lay this down, trust me with it. But in fact, I am calling you to this.
Yeah.
So it was very quick. It was just a matter of, having a posture of faithful and obedience and listening.
And so, so where did you end up going to do your doctoral studies?
At Marquette University.
Okay. And then how did you end up picking the Book of Job? That has to be
Job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your old friend Job.
So to expand on what I was saying a moment ago, I read a few books in the process of my dissertation, which is a good idea. Read a few books. But several prefaces, people would say, like, I wanted to write my dissertation on the Book of Job, and my advisor told me no. And as I was getting to know Job better, I realized that's pretty good advice. Because it's simply literarily and theologically one of the most challenging books
difficult
in the Bible. Just on every level, it's difficult. But I was in a seminar on wisdom literature, and as I was reading these scholars on the Book of Job, I was just appalled by what I was reading so much. Yeah, because I found the book beautiful. I found it bewildering. I knew I didn't understand everything. I still don't claim to understand everything. But as I'm reading their accounts, I'm like, this can't be right. Even some of them are frankly impious.
Could you give like a quick survey of what some of the interpretations were?
I mean, the dominant interpretation is that the prose of chapters 1, 2, and 42 is this kind of old folksy tale of like just simple piety. Bad things happen, but if you stick with it, then good things will happen. It'll be great. And then this other author in chapters 3 through 41 just casts the poetry into that older tale and completely changes it. even mocks the older tale. And so if you like the prose, you actually don't understand the book for these people.
Yeah, that's quite the reading of it.
Yeah, it's just this like assault against not only the prose, but against traditional Hebrew piety. And so like they'll actually say that the book of Job is skeptical literature, and that they're leading you to reject, the traditional teaching on the justice of God. That's the kind of, it's a dominant position that Job is actually skeptical literature.
Interesting. Okay, so you're reading these things and it's not hitting you in the right way, and you're like, yeah, I want to tackle this.
Yeah, because I was convinced it was something beautiful, and that's something I kind of learned at Notre Dame, was that, writing, teaching, studying, you should always be seeking the beauty in what you're doing when you're doing theology. And so I just knew that they didn't have it right, and that I wanted to understand Job.
So what aspect of Job did you do your dissertation? Because obviously there's a lot of topics that you could write on when it comes to Job. So what was it that you were kind of honing in on?
This is the other part of the problem, in that I always choose big projects. My entry into the book of Job was on the juxtaposition of mythological metaphors, because Job's friends have a, kind of a mythological, cosmological worldview where they avoid the storm wind, the storm god, chaos conf motifs.
Okay.
Whereas Job brings it up a lot. Although he brings it up in a twisted form, making God actually the enemy of the cosmos, rather than the enemy of the chaos monsters and the creator of the cosmos. Right? I mean, the skeptics actually do have a decent point in that the character Job actually is very much challenging traditional Hebrew piety. My contention, though, is that the poet himself is trying to do something creative and beautiful. So that was my entry, was looking at the different mythological perspectives of Job's friend, of Job, of the whirlwind speech, and then finally of the prose itself, where you have the Satan character. In the process, I wound up kind of realizing that not only is the poet, portraying these representatives of different mythological traditions, but all of these mythological traditions are drawn from Hebrew scripture. And not only is he alluding to these different traditions, he's also alluding to different Hebrew scriptures in the mouths of these patriarchal Edomites who wouldn't know Hebrew scripture. And so it's this kind of allegorical dramatization of Israel's religious traditions, scriptures, mythological traditions, etc. And so he's effectively created a riddle, Job as a sort of a parable of, these are our religious traditions. Here are some fundamental contradictions. Right? You can't read, while paying attention, you can't read Deuteronomy and the Psalter and Isaiah without seeing some profound contradictions or tensions. And how do we reconcile these with each other and with history? Right? Is Deuteronomy really a good enough account of the exile? Well, I don't think the author of the book of Job thought so. And so he's actually trying to make his readers wrestle with their own religious traditions and wrestle with history in a little more authentic way than a kind of simplistic reading of Deuteronomy would lead you to do, in order to effect a paradigm shift in their way of reconciling the God of justice with history. Right? So instead of trying to justify all of history as, God's will perfectly executed.
Yeah, and that if you're obedient to that will, it'll equal earthly material prosperity, which was obviously not the case.
Right. And instead trying to point them beyond history to the resurrection and to the significance of human obedience in the context of undeserved suffering vis-a-vis
and a raising of one's like kind of horizon to a desiring of something greater than material prosperity, of eternal prosperity. I remember in the Psalter in Psalm 73, the Psalter really turns, and it's when there's a character in the first couple of verses. It says, "I know that God is good to the upright in heart, but for me, my feet almost slipped because I saw the prosperity of the wicked." And then that Psalm 73. It like really kind of turns the Psalter, but it challenges the same thing, where it's like this person's like, I have been obedient, and like yet the wicked are prospering and I'm suffering. And then it really, like the Psalm 73 kind of culminates with, it was like, it wasn't until I entered into the sanctuary of God where all of
Exactly.
these things faded away. And Job kind of has the same. He's like, I shouldn't even be speaking anymore when he encounters God in the whirlwind, if I remember correctly. And he's just like, forget it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And that like the deepest answer to a profound, the innocent suffering in particular, is to encounter God. And that there's like, you can't reason it away almost. It's only God who can kind of, and by encountering him, you can say like, okay, like I may not understand, but I trust in a way.
Yeah, and so that's a very good reading and an element of Job the drama, right? And I think that the analogy with Psalm 73 is very good because it is when he enters and he looks in the sanctuary, he looks upon God, and when Job is confronted with the whirlwind, face to face with God. But I don't want to reduce the book of Job to that either, because I think that there actually is a lot of creativity within the poetry, within even these very challenging passages, where I think the poet is actually being kind of sneaky and making an argument for the resurrection.
Oh, interesting. Friends, if you want to learn more, you have to take Dr. McGrew's course. His elective on Job, I'm sure, will come into existence of one day. Okay, I have to zoom us back out. I thoroughly enjoyed that little moving through your dissertation of Job, because it's a very beautiful and mysterious book in that. But we have to cover, before the end of our time here, some other aspects of you coming to teach here. So I wanted to ask, so you are obviously specializing, you wrote your dissertation on the book of Job, but what else is your specialty? What is it that you enjoy teaching on? And what will you teach here at the Augustine Institute?
I mean, I'm teaching salvation history right now and having a ball. I love the whole Bible, not just the Old Testament. I still like the New Testament. But the Hebrew language, and especially Hebrew poetry, just has such an extraordinary capacity for double entendre and subtlety, and is profound and so theologically rich in the rhetoric that the language is capable of. So I just love teaching the Old Testament, and I love bringing into my lectures on it. Here's what the Hebrew term is, and here's other places it occurs and its particular connotations and significances and ambiguities. So that's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to classes where I can do that more. But I also, the Gospels of Mark and John are just so much fun to teach.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so to close out here, I have just kind of 3 quick hitters here. Favorite saint?
Favorite saint? I can't say I really have a favorite saint. I alluded to Bernard earlier, and Saint Augustine has always been big for me. My conversion to Catholicism without either of them is not imaginable. But if I have to say one, I'll say Saint Bernadette.
Okay, how come?
Because of her humility, because out of her simplicity and her simple obedience and love, she flipped enlightened France on its head.
Yep.
And I think that as an academic, it's simply beautiful. But I think especially as an academic, it's helpful to remember that this is the one thing that is necessary.
Yeah, is humility. I think in St. Teresa of Avila, the foundation of the spiritual life is humility. But we also have plenty, if you don't know much about St. Bernadette, on Formed, we have several movies on St. Bernadette Soubirous. She was the young woman who Mary appeared to as Our Lady of Lourdes. But you can check out, there's all kinds of things on Formed if you are intrigued by Dr. McGrew's favorite saint, but would like to learn more. Okay, favorite book of the Bible to teach?
Again,
if you don't say Job, we're at a loss here.
I haven't had the chance to teach Job much, so it can't be my favorite to teach. Most any of them that I've had the chance to teach a lot. Genesis, Exodus, Judges, the Gospels of Mark and John.
Awesome.
I had to
so
limit myself to 5.
wherever you are.
Yeah, because again, like I mentioned in my studies at Notre Dame and for my dissertation, when I'm reading the text, when I'm studying, when I'm writing, when I'm teaching, I'm always seeking to apprehend and convey beauty. And so the more time you spend teaching a text, presuming that you're continuing to go back and study the text in prayer, the more beauty you're going to find and the more beauty you're going to have to offer.
That's awesome. Okay, favorite book outside of the Bible?
I suppose I'd have to say it's a toss-up between Lord of the Rings and Song of Bernadette.
Very nice. Okay. It's terrible. I love Lord of the Rings. They were the movies that I kind of grew up on, but I actually never read the books, and so I'm currently reading Fellowship of the Ring. It's very difficult though because I've seen the movie so many times that I can't like unhinge the visual that I've received. I mean, I'm not kidding. I've probably seen those movies 10 times through. Anyways, I'm reading the Fellowship of the Ring because I'm like I can't not read the books. It would be a shame. So that's great. Favorite movie?
I guess I'll say it's a toss-up between Song of Bernadette and Tree of Life.
Very nice. I've never seen Tree of Life.
You should.
Okay. Maybe we'll try to get that on form one day. Well, wonderful. Dr. McGrew, thank you so much. We're excited to have you. And for anybody who is interested in any of these segments on Meet the Professors, you can check out the Augustine Institute Graduate School of Theology. You can just search it in Google, pull it up. You can see sample lectures. You can look at our professors. You can see the courses. I believe you can even submit something and receive a little bit extra on that. But anyways, check out the Augustine Institute Graduate School. I went through it and love it very much, and we have an incredible group of professors. So, Dr. McGrew, thank you so much for being on. We'll see you next time. God bless.